The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to those expressing them and do not necessarily reflect the OSIP Foundation Incorporated or any other group or individual. This podcast may contain dialogue or subject material that could be considered for mature audiences only. All aspects of how you play the game and the OSIP Foundation Incorporated are protected by copyright and other state and federal intellectual property laws. Unauthorized use without the express written consent of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated is strictly prohibited. If you're interested in sponsoring How You Play the Game, please email us at podcast@osipfoundation.org. Your sponsorship may be tax deductible. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of How You Play the Game, the official podcast of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated. Yours truly, Jack Furlong, with you as we talked about what's going on as far as the world of sportsmanship is concerned. This is the second episode of the month of August. The year is 2026. We're online at osipfoundation.org. The email address is podcast@osipfoundation.org. Facebook.com/OSIPFoundation, X and Instagram @OSIPFoundation, hashtag How You Play the Game. We had a very interesting situation in Toronto this week that needs to be discussed. Boston Red Sox are up to play the Toronto Blue Jays. Here's what happened, and the best way that I can describe it, I'm going to read you the article from our friends at Close Call Sports, okay? This is verbatim from their article, and I quote, Boston scored a run during Ceddanne Rafaela's sacrifice fly despite Red Sox runner Anthony Siegler failing to tag up, bringing Blue Jays manager John Schneider out of Toronto's dugout as umpire crew chief Chris Guccione explained a cavalcade of rules from the time play to fourth out, appeal, and retouch. BOSS, B-O-S-S, which means ball out strike system, which is the scoreboard, operator and scoreboard factors played a key role in the confusion. Here's the play. With runners on first and third and one out, Red Sox batter Rafaela hit a fly ball to Blue Jays center fielder Brett Bateman as base runners Nick Sogard and Anthony Siegler ran the bases as if there were two outs, failing to tag up. Toronto appealed Sogard's failure to tag up at first base and ran off the field as the inning ended on the fly out, appeal out double play. The controversy is that umpires ruled that Siegler, who was at third, his run counted despite Siegler failing to tag or retouch third base as required by rule on a caught fly. The confusion happened because the scoreboard operator mistakenly put in two outs on the scoreboard instead of one, erroneously attributed to a second out to the prior play, which featured a close catch-no-catch call with Blue Jays first baseman Vladimir Guerrero Jr. short-hopping Sogard's sharp line drive. Ruled no catch by first base umpire Nestor Ceja. The scoreboard operator then changed the scoreboard to display two outs, which occurred on the first pitch of the at-bat. Red Sox base runners then may have relied on the scoreboard's two outs and ran the bases as if there had been two outs, okay? So in this case, they went back and they looked at the review, and there was a 17-minute delay. They tried to figure out everything that was going on, okay? The biggest and best way that I can describe this as an umpire, you essentially have two types of outs in baseball, okay? You have force plays and you have time plays. A force play is when a runner basically loses their right to legally occupy a base by reason of the batter becoming a runner, okay? So, for example, nobody on, nobody out. Batter hits a ground ball in the infield. That's a force play at first base. How do you record that? You just got to have the ball in your possession and touch first base. That's it, because the runner has not reached there yet, okay? Similarly, runners on first and second, ground ball. Third baseman fields it. He runs over and tags third base. That's a force play, okay? Anything that is not a force play is essentially a timing play, okay? Now, the reason I make this disparity here, when the third out of an inning is a force play, a run cannot score, period, okay? The only comment I will add to that is it also applies if the batter runner fails to reach first base before being put out. So that's a situation where batter runner hits a little dribbler in front of the plate, pitcher fields it, he tags the batter runner going by before he reaches first base. They basically count that as a force play, okay? So when the third out of an inning is made on a force play, a run cannot score on that play. If it's a timing play, a run can score, okay? So for the purposes of trying to explain this, remember, two types of outs, force plays, time plays. Runs cannot score on the third out of an inning if it's a force play, but they can if it's a timing play. All right? The tag-ups okay, from fly balls where you're legally required to touch the base that you occupied at the time of pitch. That is considered a timing play. Why? Because it's not a force play. The force play is defined as when they're forced to vacate their base and go to the next base. They're not vacating their base, they're going back to their original base. Therefore, it is a timing play. When timing plays are the case, okay, the order in which events happen is how we determine whether or not something happens. I know that sounds really, deep, but for example, if that's why you see umpires watching the touch of home plate when there's another tag or timing play going on in the field, because if that out is recorded before the runner touches the plate, that run does not count. But if the runner touches the plate and then another runner is tagged out or put out on a timing play, okay, all of a sudden that run counts. Following me so far? I know it's a little confusing, all right? In this situation, they got the third out because they appealed the runner at first base. Okay? So what happens with the runner at third base? This is where the very rarely used fourth out comes into play. Okay? Essentially what happens here is, although you've gotten the third out of an inning, the inning is not technically completely over with, because that runner who was at third is still eligible to be put out upon legal and proper appeal, which is as simple as throwing over to the base and tagging it before people get off the field. It's that simple. That runner is then out. You have a fourth out. It does not carry over to the next inning, okay, but then that run does not score. The easiest way to avoid this is, instead of throwing to first for that out, you throw to third and put that runner out. Now it's all over and you're not worried about anything. All right. Now, how do you appeal this? The appeal is allowed to be made just like any other appeal, where you have control of the baseball and you go over and you touch the base with your foot. But it has to be done before all infielders and the pitcher have left the field, which means between the lines. As long as you have one infielder or the pitcher still in fair territory, you can make that appeal. If they're gone, the chance for that appeal is over. This is a line of demarcation that was put in the rule book to just kind of say, all right, this is when you can't do it anymore. That's simple. So, in this scenario, the Blue Jays got the third out at first base, walked off the field, and wondered, why does this run score? Well, it's because you appealed the wrong guy. It's because you got the third out, you got it after this run had scored, then you left the field. Now, if you have to take time to go back and understand that a little bit, I understand. It's confusing. It's rare. I tried very much to simplify it as best as I could. And it's a little odd. I'm not going to lie about that. Here's what I will tell you. This type of play is like textbook day one in umpire school. As umpires, we study plays like this all the time. It is on almost every test that I have to take, because it's a rule that you need to know. It's rare, but you got to know it. So when this whole thing happened, and I didn't see it live, I went back and watched it. I was like, oh, this is a fourth out play. It's that simple. Watching to see if everyone runs off the field. Yep, they do. They can't put them out. Okay, fine, great. That run counts. If you're still confused and whatnot, again, you can go back and research it. You can even open the rule book and read it. You can kind of study, the way that umpires look at it, things like that. All right. The point here is that what transpired after the play, not on the field necessarily, maybe in the clubhouse after, in the media, etc., was very alarming. Now, granted, I believe both television broadcasts were smart enough to say, guys, listen, you're Major League ball players. You should know how many outs there are. You can't always be relying on the scoreboard, because the scoreboard does not actually play a role in anything. The scoreboard can be wrong all the time, and it's what the umpire has that counts. So if you're a big league ball player, unfortunately, the onus is on you to make sure that you know how many outs there are. All right. I mean, that's one of those, fool me once, fool me twice kind of things. All right, fine. So you'll never make that mistake again, right? After that, what you read on social media, what you hear in the media, you had players kind of talking about it to the media. There was a lot of transference. There was a lot of blaming umpires. There was a lot of this rule is stupid. This rule is archaic. This rule is that. This rule is this. And as I'm hearing these things, as I'm reading these things, I'm thinking to myself, maybe you should open the rule book and learn a little bit more about the game. Maybe that's how you become better at your job, whether that be a better fan, a better ball player, a better journalist, a better broadcaster. There was actually an interview done with Aaron Boone about this, and this is what really kind of started to help me formulate how I was going to approach this. Susan Waldman was doing an interview with Aaron Boone on the radio about this, and Susan Waldman was one of these people who called this rule archaic. And I'm thinking to myself, Susan, stop the old man yells at cloud act here. And Aaron Boone says, we actually go over these plays in spring training. It's rare, but we like to know them. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it. So when you're a player who's saying bad job by the umps, when you're a journalist saying, what is this? I have to ask, why don't you just be a little better at your job, with all due respect? And the issue that I have beyond this is that this is a microcosm of how we act in society. We see something we don't like, and our response is immediately negative. It's not, well, geez, maybe I should go back and do a little research. Maybe I'll learn something. No, this is stupid. It doesn't agree with me? Stupid. Or I have to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. There's no normal conversation anymore. So I have to ask then, why do we allow this in the media, in the way that we converse with each other? The lesson here is not that umpires got it right or wrong. They got it right, by the way. The lesson here is, okay, as a layman, you may not have been aware of this little known rule. Instead of reacting like it's stupid because you don't understand it or you've never seen it, can you condition yourself to say, I didn't know that. I'm going to try and research this and learn a little bit more about the game. And then can you take that and use that in your everyday life? When you see something, when you hear something, when you read something, and you don't understand it, or you may not agree with it, can you calmly say, let me see if I can challenge this or better understand it? And then after that, if you still make the determination that maybe it's not for you, you can accept that and express it maturely. I would have had no problem if people had said after this whole thing, I didn't know that rule was on the books. I understand why it is. I feel like I could make the argument that maybe it's a little archaic. Maybe we need to re-examine it. But I understand it. Instead, we go off and saying this is stupid and Major League Baseball has to do something about it. You know where I've heard that before? In a lot of politics. In a lot of common misunderstandings in general public. So the lesson here is when something doesn't exactly go our way or goes a way that we don't understand in sports, maybe we need to take the time to do a little bit of research on it before we, come to a conclusion. And maybe throughout the course of that entire experience, we can put our testosterone aside briefly and say, all right, let me learn something. Let me formulate an opinion appropriately. Because maybe one day that turns around and that helps you later. We're so afraid to evolve. We're so afraid to learn. We're so afraid to discover new things. We want everything to be so, aligned and uniform and set. Routine. We don't want any change. We want everything to be exactly the same. Maybe, just maybe, there's room for us to actually grow just a teeny tiny bit. And when that growth is just learning about a rule you didn't know existed, and it exists just in a baseball game. It's not a township ordinance where you're going to get fined for it. Okay? It's a baseball game, folks. Maybe we need to just readjust a little bit. That's all for today. Glad you can join us as always. As a reminder, check us out at osafoundation.org. The email address is podcast@osafoundation.org. Facebook.com/osafoundation. X and Instagram @osafoundation. # how you play the game. We'll talk to everybody in just a few short weeks. Until then, treat each other with respect. How You Play the Game is a production of the OSIP Foundation, Incorporated. The producer-engineer of this episode is Sean Ryan. Music by Soundspring Studio. The executive producer of How You Play the Game is Jack Furlong. For more information, visit osipfoundation.org.